Hello again, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for Monday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm Percy, meteorologist with the National Weather Service. And on satellite imagery today, a break between moisture that's shifting off to the north here, mostly in the form of clouds. Nothing too significant in the way any precipitation with this, just maybe a few hundredths of an inch back to the northwest there. Heavier amounts occurring over the panhandle with this portion that's heading eastward, get this thing rolling, and you can see kind of a counterclockwise motion to the clouds here. That's the upper level trough pulling slowly off to the east, and that brought some pretty good showers to rainfall amounts to much of the panhandle over the last 24 hours, drying out this afternoon, showers ending but lingering over toward the border on down to the southeast, but clearing beginning to show up along the coastline, as you can see here. Next batch of clouds sliding in rapidly with the cirrus shield, of course, being higher up, higher elevation, it's moving more rapidly than the lower cloud decks. But not really much in the Kodiak yet as far as rainfall goes, but areas of rain and wind with low pressure pulling northward here, affecting the Alaska eastern Aleutians and the Alaska Peninsula. Front kicking the winds up, but not much in the way of precipitation occurring here along the southwest coast or inland. Again, nothing more than a few hundredths of an inch on up to about the White Mountain area. I think they picked up 500ths of an inch today. And St. Lawrence Island clouds, the winds diminishing here over the Pribilof, so the front east of them now after seeing gusts to 40 or more miles per hour at St. George Island. Main low center out here to the west is kind of hanging out back there and circulating, and that bring another surge of showers and gusty winds into the western and central Aleutians and beginning to improve farther to the west toward Chimney-Anat too. And you can see clouds sliding eastward here along the Arctic coast, but I didn't see any observations of any precipitation up there, except Point Hope, I think, picked up 1/100th of an inch of precipitation. Point Lay had a sprinkle as well, but not too much up there going on as well, with winds not all that bad, not much of a gradient up there. So really just clouds, isolated sprinkles back to the west, and then high pressure, variably cloudy, central interior, some breaks, sun breaks there, to more of an extent here over the Matanuska-Susitna Valley, back up toward the eastern Seward Peninsula, North Gulf Coast, and again, trough moving out of the panhandle, bringing rainfall, taking the rainfall with it, but Petersburg in the last 12 hours had a quarter of an inch of precipitation. Showers have ended there now. Juneau picked up about half an inch, same time period, and those showers ended earlier today. 24-hour amounts were pretty good down on the south end with, let's see, Ketchikan picking up 3/4 of an inch of rain, while Annette had a little over half an inch of precipitation. And then during the day today, Klawock had about a quarter of an inch or 2/10 of an inch. And again, it's all ended down there as clearing will begin to move into the area tonight. Rain along the Alaska Peninsula here, along with the gusty winds. Cold Bay wind gusts 56 miles per hour earlier today with those southeast winds. You can see a pretty tight gradient here along the southwest coast on up to St. Lawrence Island. Get a little gusty up there as well, with Hooper Bay seeing gusts of about 31 miles per hour, Kipnuk 33 miles per hour, and Cape Newnham gusts of 45 miles per hour. All that tightening gradient there, but the rainfall staying back off the coast so far. Another system coming northward here. That's actually spreading rain into the Alaska Peninsula here, and the front sort of stalled out over the eastern Aleutians. That gave nearly an inch of rain to Alaska today with fog there, but breaking out to just scattered showers. Then that kicks up again with that trough coming in toward Adak this afternoon from the western Aleutians. For tonight, that'll swing east a little bit there, but more action will be coming around with this low as it starts to track eastward here. So windy and wet for the central Aleutians, improving back to the west, but still gusty on those northwest winds. Isolated showers, bulk of the precipitation now shifting off to the northeast. So rain changing to isolated showers later tonight for Alaska. Wet for the Alaska Peninsula, but a lot less wind. Windy this evening along the southwest coast, but those winds will be diminishing after midnight. You can see the gradient in advance of that front starting to relax as it weakens. Still pretty tight up there around St. Lawrence Island. And that low center tracks northeastward here. It's going to bring a good shot of rain into Kodiak Island. Good southwest flow beginning to develop. It's going to start driving these systems into southern Alaska over the next couple of days as high pressure retreats. But for tonight, stays clear over the interior. It's going to allow temperatures to drop down towards 0 over the eastern areas and pretty chilly in the central interior. The clear skies are mostly clear skies. Very weak trough keeps a few skiffs of flurries possible on the central and far eastern Arctic coast up there. And that's about it. It's really no wind associated with that whatsoever. And dry, becoming clear there for the southeast coast. Low clouds and fog may form due to the clearing tonight, but there's enough of a gradient there. Some northern areas there, channeled winds will keep it out. And if it does form, that'll burn off probably tomorrow morning. But then late in the day, clouds will start to spread back in, but pretty nice dry day tomorrow coming up. Another nice day through the central interior Copper River Basin. Again, increasing southwest flow. This first front kind of weakens here, but that's going to spread moisture up into western Prince William Sound in the afternoon. Southern Kenai Peninsula, definitely for Port Graham, Homer, Seldovia looks wet tomorrow. Iliamna improving there as that lifts north of Kodiak, drying out a little bit. Another system coming up from the south, so that's going to increase the wind or increase the rain, not the wind. Wind fields stay down to the south through tomorrow. But the rain will tend to increase late in the day and through the evening and persist here as that frontal boundary weakens along the southwest coast. Rain and diminishing winds, but periods of light rain will continue all the way up across the Yukon Delta. St. Lawrence Island stays pretty breezy and wet throughout much of the day, but that rain cuts off. And the Seward Peninsula, just looking at clouds there along the south coast, but gusty winds for Nome and breezy and mostly clear for Kotzebue Sound, Selawik Valley, Noatak Valley areas through the Kobuk into the Koyukuk and on over to the Yukon Flats, south into the Copper River Basin. Mostly clear, mostly sunny tomorrow afternoon. And again, weak troughs keep flurries going, or at least the possibilities of some flurries along the central eastern Arctic coast. Nothing significant at all. And the winds stay rather light. This low center here keeps pretty good west winds in over especially the central Aleutians there with isolated showers ending towards Shimya, but general area of rain, so rain and wind here for Adak and Atka tomorrow. Isolated showers possible with light winds for Unalaska, Dutch Harbor, and Nikolsky. And taking a look ahead to Wednesday, see this low tracks right on up into the southwest interior with rain and pretty gusty winds coming in with the Kuskokwim Valley into south central Alaska. Moderate amounts of rain with the main front push eastward to the eastern North Gulf Coast. Rain on the increase here over this panhandle, especially to the north on down to the along the south coast late in the day, staying dry, but increasing clouds becoming cloudy over the southern panhandle with rain even pushing up into the Tanana Valley or away from the lee side of the Alaska Range. There'll be a dry slot in there, same with the Copper River Basin, kind of breaking the precipitation field up. But you get into the upslope areas of the mountains north of Fairbanks, and it'll be back into the rain. And a narrow band of fair weather continuing, but that really getting pinched off here from the northern upper Yukon Valley, southern Brooks Range. Gusty east winds across the northern interior, so offshore flow, good VFR, probably mostly clear skies, Kotzebue, Kivlina, Shishmaref, on up to Point Hope. And again, just an isolated threat of some moisture, but nothing, probably the more significant will be the increase in the winds you're going to see on the eastern Arctic coast, especially the western Arctic coast, see a bigger increase than the east side will. Otherwise, out in the Bering Sea, big area low pressure, good southwest flow. You can see the next trough right through here. That's going to be rolling in behind this one Wednesday night and Thursday, and then other development back out to the west here over the central Aleutians. I'll be following a similar track. Low temperatures tonight, anywhere from 0 to 10 above over the eastern interior. 15, that's, I believe, Northway's forecast low, 12 Arctic Village. Milder out along the coast up there, upper 20s near 30, freezing central coast, near 40 for Point Hope, Shishmaref, and upper 20s west central interior, 40s southwest, mid to upper 40s Alaska Peninsula, mid 40s for the Aleutians. Southeast coast, upper 30s to lower to mid 40s. And then the highs tomorrow, 50 to 55, south central Alaska, into the valleys, near freezing there, the upper Yukon, mostly in the 30s though, to the Brooks Range, mid 30s central Arctic coast, mid to upper 40s here over the northwest and the Seward Peninsula. St. Lawrence Island, 50 to 55, or mid 50s more likely there, northeast Bristol Bay, near 50 out toward the coast. And for the lows on Wednesday morning, a little milder here, staying probably above 10 degrees. And definitely milder southern Alaska, mid to upper 40s for the lows with increasing southerly flow and moisture. Highs mid 50s in the south to lower 30s along the eastern Arctic coast.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
First line weather graphic showing IFR here, just reaching St. Lawrence Island. And then a little bit into the Yukon Delta there, marginal VFR, Nunivak Island, Bristol Bay, Kodiak Island, up into southern Cook Inlet, maybe Ketchimak Bay, definitely Kamishak Bay, and then westward across the entire Bering Sea, and just about all the Aleutians. Good VFR in the interior, marginal VFR from the Brooks Range, maybe even the south slopes of the Brooks Range, all the way out to the coast, central Arctic coast, IFR, Panhandle, VFR. Tomorrow afternoon, same thing, VFR across southeast coast up to Yakutat, Copper River Basin, Cook Inlet, western Kenai Peninsula, east side though, over toward the Alaska Range, lowering conditions throughout the day as moisture comes northward, but seeing VFR through the central interior, including Chukchi Sea and most of Norton Sound, and then IFR there kind of expanding along the eastern Arctic coast with marginal conditions to the Brooks Range. Wednesday morning, nothing but marginal VFR out over the Bering Sea and the Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula. Areas of IFR here over the southwest interior and also southern Seward Peninsula, St. Lawrence Island. IFR right along the western Alaska Range. Also another area here for western Prince William Sound, east side of the Kenai Peninsula. Otherwise VFR again for the southeast coast on up across 40 Mile Country, Copper River Basin and the central interior right up to the Brooks Range. Afternoon, some IFR now develops or somehow gets up there into the Yukon Flats, at least the southern Yukon Flats there north of the White Mountains, and otherwise VFR back to the west there across the Kobuk Valley, Noatak Valley, marginal from the North Slope and Arctic Coast. IFR here, it looks like Talkeetna's Coast Range into the Wrangell Mountains, southeastern Copper River Basin, and across Yakutat to just about Elfin Cove. Marginal VFR down to the northern Panhandle, staying VFR down to the south, and the Bering Sea and Aleutians, lots of marginal VFR. Passes Anaktuvik and both Anaktuvik and Atigan will be VFR tomorrow, and Lake Clark and Merrill starting out VFR, gradually becoming marginal throughout the day and into the afternoon, with possible IFR developing on both eastern entrances. Rainy, same trend, but VFR becoming marginal, taking a little longer. Probably won't see any IFR in the eastern entrance until later. And windy, VFR. Isabel, wide open, VFR for Mentasta and Tanita as well, although seeing an increase in the clouds throughout the day. And Portage, VFR to start, becoming marginal VFR, becoming IFR in the eastern entrance. And Chilkoot and White, VFR. Freezing levels, 6,000 feet or so here. Northern Kuskokwim Valley there, west-northwest of Denali Park area. Otherwise, 6,000 feet here to 10,000 there around Kodiak Island. Quite a thermal gradient aloft here across the southeast coast. 10,000 feet northern Queen Charlotte is 2,000 feet there just north of Skagway. And not too much of a gradient out here over the Bering Sea, roughly about 4,000 feet, give or take. And icing coming up from the southwest, so icing possibilities increase above about 8,000 feet here, south central Alaska. Could be some areas of considerable moderate rime due to terrain enhancement. And this batch down here, a little heavier, and that'll just be reaching the south side of the Alaska Peninsula tomorrow afternoon. And then tomorrow evening and tonight, that whole thing's going to expand and bring a better chance of some icing, although probably above 8,000 feet. But that whole mass of moisture will slip on up into southern Alaska, Kodiak Island tomorrow night, and into southern Alaska by Wednesday morning. Otherwise, areas of mixed icing out over the Aleutians. Upper level wind flow chart, jet stream, upper level low here in the Bering Sea. Good south flow, about 90 knots, sort of splitting here. This branch going over the top of the ridge at about 60 and picking up to 120 knots. Still some ridging through here, but again, moisture will be increasing as the whole pattern sort of shifts eastward and the high breaks down. And 9,000 feet southeast, 25 to 30 here, southwest interior. Westerlies 30 to 45 over the central Aleutians, and 25 knots into the Panhandle. 3,000 feet southeast, 35 Kenai Peninsula, and a narrow band there. Otherwise, 25 increasing to 40 knots over the northern Bering Sea. Westerlies 30 to 40 central western Aleutians, lighter for the Alaska Peninsula. Turbulence, moderate chop here. Fognak, Barren Islands, up into the Alaska Range in a bigger area there over the northern Bering Sea, and kind of turbulent over the Aleutians as well. And after the break, I'll be back with the marine forecasts.
Thanks for joining us for another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider, joined again by Eric Stevens from the GINA, or Geographic Information Network of Alaska at the University of Alaska Fairbanks. Thanks for joining us again, Eric.
Glad to be here.
Thanks. We are talking about satellites today, and what are satellites? And the easy way to talk about that would be to introduce our friend the globe here, which is a round spheroid type shape. We haven't been on a flat Earth as far as history is known for several hundred years now, and because of that we also know that we are orbiting around other objects in space, and that objects are orbiting around the Earth as well. We call all those things satellites in some form or fashion, right, Eric?
Right. Well, this leads to the discussion of Johannes Kepler's research 400 years ago. Did some of the early work and founded the 3 laws of planetary motion, which are important to planets and also to weather satellites.
Okay.
Kepler's first law talks about how the orbit of an object around another object is an ellipse, not necessarily a circle.
Kind of a flattened circle?
Yeah, depending on how flat
squished
it could be.
Okay.
For our purposes, we'll just say they're mostly circular.
Okay.
The second law is most important for us, though, and that is the closer an object is to the thing it's orbiting, the faster it goes. So in the solar system, the planet Mercury is the closest planet to the sun. It orbits the sun in 88 days. It moves at 100,000 kilometers an hour.
It is just
moving.
Okay.
Right. And further out from the Earth is Jupiter, and it moves at only 1/4 the speed of Mercury, and it has to go further, so it takes 12 of our years for Jupiter to make 1 lap. The further out you are, the slower you go.
Okay.
So we're talking about planets. Why? What does it have to do with weather satellites? Turns out Kepler's laws apply to planets orbiting the sun. They also apply to satellites orbiting the Earth.
Okay.
You know, our natural satellite is the moon. There's the famous Apollo 8 Earthrise shot.
Beautiful shot.
Oh, yeah. You could just talk about that forever. December 1968, the moon is about 250,000 miles away from the Earth.
Okay.
It takes a month to go around the Earth. It's that far out, it takes a full month to do an orbit. Another shot here of the International Space Station. Instead of being 250,000 miles out, the ISS is only 250 miles out. It's really close. And so it doesn't take a full month for the space station to go around the Earth. It only takes 90 minutes. It's so close, it just whips right around 90 minutes.
Okay.
So weather satellites, there are a number of weather satellites, and there are a number of orbits. The further out you have the satellite, the longer it takes to go around the Earth. And this is important because different satellites have different purposes. So we have a satellite here. This little salt shaker lid will serve as our satellite going around the Earth. Let's say you have a satellite that's 22,000 miles above the Earth. This is kind of a magical spot, because at that distance, it takes a full day for the satellite to go around the Earth. Imagine if you put your satellite 22,000 miles up from the equator and had it go with the Earth as the Earth spun.
At the same speed.
Right. The satellite goes around the Earth just as fast as the Earth itself is turning. In effect, the satellite will hover in one spot.
I see.
And it appears when you make a movie loop of picture after picture after picture, you can replay that and you get these movie loops. Geostationary satellites, these are called, because they're stationary in appearance, and they provide a constant frame of reference. We've got an example here. Another nice thing about these satellites, since they're that far out at 22,000 miles, you can see from pole to pole, which is nice. So they're pretty broad view and a constant frame of reference.
So those are the pictures. If you're watching a weather satellite loop on TV, your favorite weather show, that's the picture that you're going to see, is one that's sitting over the same spot.
If you're seeing a movie loop play again and again, that came from geostationary satellites. That's the only way you can do that.
Yeah.
The bummer, though, for us in Alaska is we're up on the very top of the planet. And for geostationary satellites to work, they have to be over the equator. So for the geostationary bird to view Alaska, it's kind of like reading a book, but you're reading it edge on like that.
Right.
So there's another kind of orbit called the polar orbit, which is nice. We're near the pole.
Yeah.
And here's a satellite. Those polar orbiters are much closer to the Earth, getting down toward International Space Station elevation. And they're not in the equatorial plane. Rather, their orbital plane is inclined like this. And the Earth turns under that satellite as the satellite orbits. The nice thing about that is for Alaska, the satellite will go right over Alaska a few times a day. And so you get a much closer image. We've got a shot from the Sumi NPP satellite. Specifically, it's a true color image from the VIRS sensor. That's an acronym there. But it's a beautiful shot of Alaska, and you can see so much detail, the kind of detail because you're close in.
Very high resolution.
You couldn't get this kind of view from geostationary satellites. The advantage of these polar orbiters is nice close imagery. You can see a lot of detail. The disadvantage, though, is that the satellite flies by, and then you have to wait a while to get the next image. And if geostationary weaknesses are that you're reading the page like that, the polar orbiter, you're reading the page straight on, but it's so close, and then it zips by, and you have to wait for the satellite to come around the Earth again. So there's no one perfect solution. Different satellites for different orbits, each has their strength, and amazingly, it all comes back to Johannes Kepler and his laws of planetary motion, the same laws that govern how the planets orbit the sun. They govern how the satellites orbit the Earth, and even our little pretend salt shaker right here.
Right, okay. Well, since the 1957 Sputnik, we've been putting man-made objects into orbit around the Earth and starting to get pictures back. Who knows what will happen in the next 50 to 100 years. Amazing
it's
stuff.
It's a growing science, and the future is bright.
Thank you so much for joining us again, Eric. And for more information on Dehne and what the satellite systems do there and what Eric's been talking about today, you can go to the web address on your screen. For Alaska Weather Facts, I'm meteorologist Dave Snider.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Looking at today, Monday's sea ice analysis. Not much change up here. This area is still kind of doing a slow dissolve, and this tending to pull westward a little bit there with the slow growth up along the outer edge of that pack ice farther to the north. But you can see along the, from about Point Barrow eastward, new ice forming here along the coastline, mostly inside of the barrier islands, but you can see kind of at least something of a change from what we saw late last week. And moving on to coastal water forecast, variable 10 on the south coast tomorrow, southeast 15, north side, seas 8 to 9 feet, northerlies 25 knots, Lynn Canal, Glacier Bay area, 15 Stevens Passage, light northwest breeze for Clarence Strait with 2-foot seas. They'll swing around to the southeast to 15 for Wednesday, south 15 on the south coast, and then increasing to small craft advisories, 30 knots. On the north coast, 10 to 11-foot seas, south 20, gale force gusts, Lynn Canal, kind of a change from what you'll see tomorrow, and southeast 20 gusts 35, also for Stevens Passage. Prince William Sound, northeast 20 tomorrow, east 30 knots, eastern North Gulf Coast. Western coast here, full gales, east 40 knots, seas 11 feet, southeast 40 for the Barrens, east 35. Kamishak Bay, northeast 30 south of the Forelands, small craft advisories for northern Cook Inlet, those seas up there up to 7 feet. And for Wednesday, gales for Cook Inlet now. Southeast, north of the Forelands, 35 knots, 12-foot seas. Southwest 35, 11-foot seas here for the southern inlet, and south 40 for Kamishak Bay. Southwest 45 knots for the Barren Islands, those seas edging over 20 feet, and 20-foot seas for the western North Gulf Coast with a south wind at 40 knots for the entire both zones there. And Prince William Sound, gale warnings for Wednesday, southeast 35 knots, seas building to 9 feet. And Shelikof Strait, gales no forecast for tomorrow, east 35, south 30 on the east side of Kodiak. And then from Sitkinak to Castle Cape to Cape Saratchev, southwest 20, 10 to 11-foot seas, 15-knot winds, bearings east side of the peninsula, Bristol Bay, southeast 15. West 35, gales come into the picture Wednesday for Bristol Bay, southwest 30 for the Alaska Peninsula, those seas 14 feet. And storm warnings out, Kodiak Island, And Shelikof Strait, 50 knots out of the southwest, seas up to 26 feet on the east side of Kodiak, and 45 knots southwesterlies there. Sitka to Castle Cape with 23-foot seas. Fox Islands tomorrow, south to southwest, 20 to 30 knots. Strongest here for Winmac Island, Nikolsky, seas up to 10 feet. And west-southwest 30 for the central Aleutians, and west 35 for the western areas of 15-foot seas. Those come down, especially out west, to 20 knots, and still looking at small craft advisories here with 25 to 30 out of the southwest, especially for Atka Island over to the Fox Islands, southwest 30, pretty uniform, with seas running 14 to 15 feet. Southwest coast tomorrow, southern Nunivak Island, southerlies 25 knots. Otherwise, southeast 30 knots here. Northern Bering Sea, north of the island, turn easterly 25 to 30 from Norton Sound across St. Lawrence Island. Pribilofs down to 20 knots. And then for Wednesday, southwest 25 here for the Pribilofs, right into Kuskokwim Bay. Lighter north of Nunivak Island, just barely a breeze there. Northeast 15 for St. Matthew Island. East 20 knots, Norton Sound and St. Lawrence Island. Seas 4 to 7 feet. Eastern Beaufort Sea coast, west-northwest at 15, not too bad, especially the central coast, light winds out of the north. Northeast 15 on the west side, down to Cape Thompson, east 15, then Cape Thompson on down, east 25. That's good for a small craft advisory. And that'll hold through Wednesday with 7-foot seas, a little stronger, a little brisker now, from Cape Thompson to Cape Beaufort, 30 knots, west side, 25 knots out of the east. And a little bit of an increase here even on the central and east side, east 20 knots, about 15 for the eastern zone. For tonight, risk of a few flurries up there on that eastern zone, Barter Island, Kaktovik, maybe even the central coast, possibly anything light, probably won't happen at all. Clear mostly through the interior with fairly light winds all the way down the Panhandle, even lighter winds stepped over the northern areas here due to the high pressure over the Yukon. Rain slowly spreading up to the southern Kenai Peninsula, southern Cook Inlet, definitely for Kodiak Island. Wet along the southwest coast, winds gradually diminishing, really diminishing for the Alaska Peninsula with rain changing to showers. More action with that low in the central Aleutians, and that pushes a good storm into the southwest interior on Wednesday.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.